Remember those old clunky CRT TVs like we kind of grew up with? Remember how much space those things took up? It's crazy to think that now we've gone from those massive boxes to like these incredible paper-thin displays in just a few years. But, it makes you wonder, what's next? What's the next big leap for display tech? What's going to blow us all away? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. MicroLED.
MicroLED.
Yeah, MicroLED. It's this technology that has some people saying it could completely change, well, everything. I mean, think about it. Our phones, our TVs, maybe even like how we think about screens in general. We've been going through a ton of articles and industry reports on this, and let me tell you, it gets pretty mind-blowing.
I bet.
So before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with the basics. What exactly is MicroLED? Imagine this. You're looking at your TV screen, right? But instead of a backlight or even a few thousand LEDs, it's made of millions of tiny microscopic LEDs.
Wow.
Yeah. Each one of these LEDs is like a single pixel emitting its own light. And we're talking LEDs so small you practically need a microscope to see them.
That's incredible. So how does that even work? Are these like really tiny versions of the LEDs we already have? That's where it gets really interesting. What makes micro-LEDs so different was they're not made from the same materials as the LEDs we're used to seeing.
Oh.
Yeah. Micro-LEDs use inorganic materials, specifically a material called gallium nitride.
Gallium nitride.
Yeah. Gallium nitride. Some people might recognize that from like those super bright, high-power LEDs they're using in car headlights now.
Ah, okay.
The big difference is that unlike the organic compounds they use in OLED displays, these inorganic materials are much more resilient. They don't degrade as easily.
Okay, so we're talking about a fundamental difference in like the materials themselves. But what does that mean for the average person? Why should they care about like inorganic versus organic?
Well, think about this. You know how OLED screens, they can suffer from that burn-in effect if you leave like a static image on for too long?
Oh, right.
Yeah, that happens because the organic materials in OLEDs, they naturally degrade over time, especially with constant light exposure.
Makes sense.
But with these inorganic micro-LEDs, that's much less of a concern. We're talking about potentially much longer lifespans for these displays, maybe even to the point where burn-in becomes a total non-issue.
So hold on. Are you saying no more panicking about accidentally leaving a static image on your screen for too long?
Potentially, yeah.
That's a pretty compelling advantage right there, I'd say, especially with how much we all rely on our devices these days. But, I mean, let's be real. Building an entire screen out of millions of microscopic LEDs, that can't be easy, right?
You're telling me. It's incredibly complex. You're basically assembling these tiny LEDs one by one with ridiculous precision. Each and every micro-LED needs to be placed perfectly, wired up correctly. It's a massive undertaking from a technological standpoint. And honestly, it's one of the biggest challenges they're facing in getting micro-LED to go mainstream.
Okay, so we've talked about how complex it is to make these micro-LED screens, but what about like the benefits? We keep hearing about how amazing this technology is supposed to be, but I want to know, how does it actually stack up against the competition? What makes it so special?
So there are a few key areas where micro-LED really shines. First off, brightness. We're talking serious firepower.
Oh, yeah.
Micro-LED can get way brighter than OLED or MiniLED displays, like way brighter. We're talking potentially several times higher brightness levels, getting close to what you and I see in like the real world.
Hold on, several times brighter. That's got to be a huge difference. What kind of impact does that have on, actually using the screen?
It changes everything. For one thing, it makes it possible to actually enjoy content outdoors. I mean, even in direct sunlight, no more washed out screen. Imagine like watching a movie on a sunny day and actually being able to see it clearly.
Okay, yeah, that would be amazing. No more squinting at a dim screen at the beach, trying to make out what's happening.
Exactly. And it's not just about being outdoors either. That higher brightness means a way wider color gamut, richer blacks, and just an overall more vibrant, lifelike image.
So it's not just about cranking up the brightness, it's like a whole visual upgrade.
Oh, absolutely. And then, of course, there's the lifespan. Like we were talking about earlier, those inorganic materials are seriously tough. Where an OLED screen might start to see burn-in after a few years, micro-LED displays, they could last for decades with almost no degradation.
Wait, are you serious? Decades? That almost sounds too good to be true. What's the catch?
Well, the catch is mostly in the manufacturing, like we've said. But in terms of the tech itself, it's pretty amazing.
Okay, so decades of use. Anything else? Are there other areas where MicroLED is ahead of the game?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we've covered brightness, we've covered lifespan, but another big one, especially these days, is energy efficiency.
Right, got to think about battery life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it. Each microLED is its own little light source, right?
Right, like millions of tiny bulbs.
Yep. And that means you can control each one individually. When they're displaying black, they're completely off, not using any power at all.
Oh, wow.
Compare that to OLED, where even a black pixel still kind of glows a little bit, still drawing some power. It's a huge difference.
So we're talking about like way longer battery life for our phones, our smartwatches, everything.
Exactly.
That is a massive plus, especially with how much battery life we seem to go through these days. You know, one thing I found super interesting while I was reading up on all this was the potential for flexible micro-LED displays. Is that like actually a thing?
It's definitely something people are working on. They've already made some prototype flexible micro-LED panels.
Yeah.
And just thinking about the possibilities is kind of mind-blowing.
Flexible micro-LED displays. I can't even wrap my head around it. It's like straight out of sci-fi, you know?
This really is wild. But you could just unfold it into a bigger screen, like a tablet.
Whoa.
Or like, what if your clothes had displays built right in?
Next level.
Yeah. Or, I don't know, screens that can wrap around curved surfaces. There's so much potential there.
It's a lot to take in. But let's be real for a sec. If micro-LED is this amazing, why isn't everyone using it already?
Good point. Like with anything new, there are some hurdles. Right now, the biggest one is actually making the darn things.
Right, because we're talking about placing millions of microscopic LEDs perfectly.
Exactly. It's incredibly difficult, and that makes it super expensive to do on a large scale.
Okay, so basically it's a cost thing right now.
Pretty much. You see, right now, the amount of usable micro-LED panels they can make at once is still pretty low. A lot of them end up with defects, and that just drives the cost way up.
So that's why we're only seeing micro-LED in like super expensive stuff for now, like those fancy TVs or those huge video walls they have in stadiums and stuff.
Exactly. Those are the only places that can really afford to use it right now.
Makes sense. But I was reading that a leading smartphone company is supposed to be coming out with a smartwatch that uses micro-LED. That's got to be a big deal, right? A leading smartphone company is known for pushing the boundaries of tech, so them getting on board with micro-LED, that's saying something.
For sure. It's a huge sign that things are moving in the right direction, that it's becoming more realistic to actually make micro-LED stuff for everyday use.
So it's not just a pipe dream. We could actually see micro-LED becoming like the norm in the future.
Oh, absolutely. As the technology gets better and they figure out how to make it more efficiently, the cost is going to keep going down. And that's going to open the door for a lot more people to use it. It might not happen overnight, but I think in the next few years, we're going to start seeing micro-LED pop up everywhere.
Wow. A future where screens are crazy bright, super energy efficient, and maybe even flexible. That's wild.
It's going to be amazing. It's clear that micro-LED has the potential to completely change how we use tech, how we see information, everything. It's a game changer.
That's for sure. Well, there you have it, folks. A glimpse into the future of displays. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of micro-LED. What do you think? Is micro-LED going to live up to all the hype? Let us know what you think.